Hey guys, and welcome back to your English 2 classroom. Today we're going to talk about your assignments for September the 2nd to 2020. Okay, so let's look at your agenda, and here is today's date. We're going to go over the test and record data. So for you remote learners, I will put in a separate video going over the test. I don't want to do that just yet because not all of my face-to-face learners have taken the test yet or have not put in their answers. So I'll probably get that out to you tomorrow going over the test. Lesson 1.18, Ed, get ready to read without title and then read without title. Without title is a poem, so the selection is shorter, but there's still a lot to absorb there and analyze. And we still have those short answer questions to do. So let's get started talking about the expectations here and just going over some of the information and giving you the instructions. So we're still talking about the essential question, how do we engage with others while staying true to ourselves? That essential question goes with Unit 1. So for the rest of this 6 weeks, everything that we read, we'll be kind of viewing it through that lens. How do we engage with others while staying true to our own values and our own customs? Okay. If you have not already done so, make sure that you fill out your response log for by any other name. So a lot of people get confused about what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to finish that response log. That response log won't be finished until the end of the 6 weeks, until the end of this unit, when we've read all of the selections on the page. Okay, so let's get started. So you are going to answer this question by taking a note over it. So you can just highlight any portion of this, and let's just do this one. Highlight this portion and add a note. Okay, so this is where you're going to type your answer, and then it will show up for me where I can see it. So this is your question. Imagine being suddenly uprooted from your current life and moving to a new place with different customs and a different way of life. What aspects of your current life would you miss? How would this change affect how you think about who you are? Write a brief journal entry exploring your ideas. So your journal entry will be in your notes. Okay, we're going to be talking about setting. I'm not going to give a lesson over setting. That's something that you've learned about a long time ago. But the setting encompasses more than simply the time and place where the action occurs, which is probably how you learn setting, as the time and place. In this poem that you will read, the interplay is between two historical and cultural settings, and that is crucial to the theme. So I believe it goes back and forth from setting to setting and time period to time period. So be looking for that in the poem. This is a lyric poem. Lyric poetry expresses the speaker's thoughts and feelings. It implies rather than states the speaker's emotions. So the speaker does not come right out and tell you. So make sure you differentiate between the speaker and the author. Sometimes the author is the speaker. A lot of times in poetry they are, but we can't always assume that. There also could be another character that is being played out through the poetry. So just keep that in mind. It's written in free verse without any regular meter. So it's not a sonnet. It's not a haiku. It is written without any particular meter. And it uses the rhythm of natural speech to create its musical quality. Okay. The poem's present day setting is the late 20th century, so the late 1900s, in a modern American city. The poem's past is in the father's previous Native American culture. The way the characters think of and react to these settings drives the choices that they make in their lives. As you read without title, use the chart to record references to the historical and cultural settings. In particular, note how the speaker seems to feel about each of these settings, and one example is done for you. So you'll have to come back to this as you're reading. So even though we'll be going on to the next page of reading and answering the questions, you'll need to come back and fill in this chart with cultural details about from the setting. So the example given here is the buffalo mentioned in the poem. They represent the setting that it represents is the Native American past, and the speaker's tone towards that is sympathetic. So remember the tone is the author's attitude towards what he or she is writing about, and we can express that with feeling words. Okay, so you've got 3 more spaces to fill in there on that. Making inferences about the theme. Most of the time, poems don't come right out and state the theme. But as you read the poem, think about the historical and the cultural setting that are central to the poem's theme. And you're going to record that in your chart. To infer the theme, you will consider the details and the speaker's tone in light of your own experiences and knowledge. So you'll think about the other things that you've read, things that you know from your own experiences, and just the author's attitude towards what he or she is writing about. And that will help you to infer what the theme is. What is the point that the author is trying to make? What does he or she want us to learn? In addition to historical and cultural details, there are some other things to think about when you're reading this poem to help you infer the theme. And this is something that I always talk about with my students in particular, and that is the title, okay? And the title of a poem almost always helps you to determine what the theme is. When you have a novel, it does not, the title doesn't always tell you what the theme is, okay? So Frankenstein, for instance. Frankenstein is the name of the doctor in Frankenstein that creates the monster, okay, the creature. But that doesn't tell us anything about what the theme is, okay? Well, it might tell us a little bit, but not much. However, in poetry, most of the time, the title will give you clues as to what the theme is. So I had my students a few years ago read a poem called Those Winter Sundays, okay? And one of their questions was, why were they polishing their shoes? And the choices were to go to school, to go to church, and to do chores or something like that. The answer was very obvious from the title saying those winter Sundays. Well, you wouldn't shine your shoes to go to school on Sunday. You probably wouldn't shine your shoes to go to school. You would be wearing your best shoes. So the answer was to church. But so many of my students just didn't pay attention to the title and missed that question. And so I always use that as an example of how important it is to look at the title of the poem. Some poems have no title or a title that merely tells the subject, but for many poems, the titles contribute to the overall meaning of the poem. Another thing to think about is repetition. Repetition is a poetic device that's used very often, and if a poet chooses to repeat something, because poetry is condensed language, basically. Poems are shorter and more condensed than, say, a short story or a novel, which we call prose. Anything that's not poetry basically is prose. So if a poet chooses to repeat something, it's done intentionally, and that's something that you should pay attention to. Also look for changes or shifts in tone, like if the tone changes from one thing to another extreme, or if there's a change in the structure or a change in the narrator. Things like that can help you with the central ideas of the poem. So just keep those things in mind as you read. That's all that there is to this page. And then you will come back to this and fill it in as you read or after you read. So let's move on to, let's see what lesson number this is again. 1.19, reading. So anytime it says read and then the name of the selection, That means you read and annotate on your own, take notes. The root word of annotate is note, so that's what it means, taking notes. You can do that on your own, and then I can't think of a time that I would have you read and tell you that you didn't need to do these yellow boxes. Okay, so they always give you something to annotate, and they always give you something to answer. Remember that these need to be answered thoroughly, and what it does is it helps you to stop and think about what you're reading as you're reading it instead of just blowing right past it. Okay, it really, really helps you to understand and these questions are, you know, are deliberately designed to make you think about certain things as you're reading to enhance your comprehension. So just keep that in mind. I don't want you to come back and do them after you read, although you could technically, but it works better if you use it as a guided reading as it's meant to be. Okay, so to stop and kind of digest and take in what you've read so far, think about it and write an answer and then keep reading. So let's just look at I'm not going to read the poem with you or the background information. You can do that. Remember, you can listen to it. It might be helpful to you to listen since this is a poem. As you read, think about ways in which the life of the speaker's father is different from the traditional life of his people. Annotate. Highlight details in lines 1 through 4 that reveal the historical and cultural background of the speaker's father. Okay? So anything in lines 1 through 4 that reveal the historical or cultural background. So anything that indicates Native American heritage, basically, because we already learned that's what her father's heritage is. Okay? And then, why does the speaker begin by sharing details that no longer apply to her father's life? Why do you think she started out telling us about that? If you type something and then after you read, you go, now that I've read the whole poem, I think something different, then you're welcome to come back and change it. Okay, and you'll read some more. Highlight details in lines 18 through 22 that make connections between the father's past and present. What theme do these connections point toward? So at this point, you should probably be able to tell a little bit about what the theme is going to be. So kind of discuss that a little bit. And that's all. So for the poem, I was thinking there was a third question. For the poem, there's just 2. All right, then. So by the time we record our data and reflect on our tests from yesterday, and you get this done, so let's just kind of review what you need to get done today. You're going to record your data from the test, mostly my face-to-face learners. I'll put something in later for my remote learners. You're going to answer this question with the quick start by taking a note. And then after you read the poem, you're going to need to come back and fill these in. So make sure that you do this part, okay? And then you have your 2 questions and your additional highlighting and annotating on your own, in addition to what it asks you to highlight and the questions in the boxes. All right, that's your 2 lessons for today. If you want to work ahead, you will be doing the check your understanding and the respond questions, analyzing the text, these 5 questions. You will be doing that. So if you want to go ahead and get started on that, I don't have a problem with it. All right, I will see you soon.